The bus had already pulled away when Ethan saw the woman collapse at the edge of the crosswalk. He looked at the time, looked at the office tower only 3 blocks away where the interview of his life would begin in less than 20 minutes, and then looked back at the stranger lying on the pavement while dozens of people hurried past as if nothing had happened. For a moment he stood frozen. Then he ran toward her, knowing every second he spent there could cost him everything he had worked for. Ethan had spent nearly 2 years trying to rebuild his life. After his father's illness forced him to leave college and take temporary jobs, temporary somehow became permanent. Bills kept coming. Dreams kept waiting. His father had passed away the previous winter, leaving Ethan with memories, unpaid debts, and a promise he had made at the hospital. "Don't stop living because I had to stop," his father had whispered. Those words had stayed with him every day. The interview that morning was for a project coordinator position at a respected engineering company. It wasn't just another job. It was stability, health insurance, and the chance to finally move his mother out of the apartment where every leaking pipe reminded them how little they had left. Everything depended on that interview. The woman on the sidewalk looked to be in her 60s. Her grocery bag had spilled open, oranges rolling into the street. Her breathing was uneven, and her eyes were barely open. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Ethan asked. She managed the smallest nod. A crowd formed but nobody stepped forward. Someone said, "Call an ambulance." Another person answered, "Someone else already will." Nobody actually reached for a phone. Ethan did. While waiting for emergency services, he took off his jacket and folded it beneath the woman's head. She tried to sit up, but he gently stopped her. "Please don't move." "My purse," she whispered. It was lying several feet away. Ethan picked it up before anyone else could. The ambulance arrived within minutes, but those minutes felt endless. The paramedics asked questions. Ethan answered what he knew. One of them asked if he was family. "No," Ethan replied. "I just found her." The older woman reached for his sleeve. "Don't leave yet." He hesitated. The clock on a nearby building showed he was already late. "I have somewhere important to be." She looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry." "You don't have to apologize." The paramedics needed someone to help identify her, because she struggled to answer clearly. Ethan opened her purse only after receiving permission. He found her identification and a folded emergency contact card. One paramedic called the number while another prepared to leave. Only after they assured him they had everything they needed did Ethan finally head toward the interview. By the time he arrived, 43 minutes had passed. The receptionist looked uncomfortable. "I'm sorry," she said. "The hiring panel already started with the next candidate." "I know I'm late," Ethan replied, trying to catch his breath. "Please, just ask if they'll give me 5 minutes." She disappeared behind the doors. A few moments later, a middle-aged man in a navy suit stepped outside. "You must be Ethan." "Yes, sir. I'm Daniel Foster." Ethan recognized the hiring director immediately. Daniel checked his watch. "You were scheduled almost an hour ago." "I know. Any particular reason?" Ethan could have invented traffic or blamed public transportation. Instead, he simply said, "Someone needed help." Daniel studied him for several silent seconds. "I appreciate honesty," he finally said. "Unfortunately, timing matters here." Ethan nodded slowly. "I understand." Daniel offered a polite handshake before returning inside. Just like that, the opportunity disappeared. Ethan walked out of the building feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter because the woman was safe. Heavier because he had probably sacrificed the future he had fought so hard to reach. When he reached home, his mother immediately noticed. "It didn't go well?" He forced a smile. "It just wasn't my day." She didn't ask more questions. She simply placed dinner on the table, pretending not to notice how little either of them ate. The next morning, Ethan started applying for more jobs again. Days turned into a week. Then another. No calls. His savings nearly vanished. One afternoon, he received an unexpected phone call from the hospital. "This is Riverside Medical Center. Were you the gentleman who assisted Mrs. Margaret Lawson last Tuesday?" "Yes. She would like to thank you personally if you're willing." Ethan almost declined. He didn't want gratitude. Still, something in the nurse's voice convinced him to visit. Margaret looked much healthier than before. Her smile appeared the moment he entered. There you are. You look much better. Because you stopped. She gestured toward the chair beside her bed. I've been trying to remember your face all week. It wasn't a big thing. She laughed softly. It was to me. They talked for nearly an hour. Margaret explained that she lived alone after losing her husband years earlier. She had felt dizzy while walking home from the pharmacy. I remember everyone looking, she said. But only one person came. Ethan shrugged. Anyone would have done it. She smiled knowingly. They didn't. Before he left, she asked about his work. He hesitated before telling the truth. I actually missed a job interview because of that day. Her expression changed. I'm so sorry. It wasn't your fault. You should have gone. I couldn't. She looked at him quietly. You chose a stranger over yourself. I chose what felt right. Margaret reached into the drawer beside her bed. I want to repay you. She held out an envelope. Ethan immediately shook his head. I can't accept that. It's only money. That's exactly why I can't. She insisted twice more. He refused each time. Finally she smiled. You really are your own person. He left without the envelope. Outside the hospital he felt strangely peaceful despite having no idea how next month's rent would be paid. 2 days later another rejection email arrived. Then another. His confidence slowly faded. One evening his mother quietly sold the last piece of jewelry she still owned from her wedding. Ethan noticed the empty jewelry box. You sold it. We needed groceries. He couldn't answer. That night he barely slept. For the first time since his father's death, he wondered if hope alone was enough. The following Monday his phone rang again. The caller ID displayed an unfamiliar number. Hello. Mr. Carter? Yes. This is Daniel Foster. Ethan straightened instantly. The interview director? I'd like you to come in tomorrow morning. Ethan blinked. I thought the position was filled. It was. Confused, Ethan waited. Daniel continued. I'd rather explain in person. The entire night felt endless. He arrived 30 minutes early. Daniel welcomed him into his office instead of the interview room. I owe you an apology, Daniel said. You don't owe me anything. I judged your priorities before understanding them. Ethan frowned. Daniel opened a folder. After you left, something bothered me. He had asked the receptionist to verify Ethan's story. She had found the ambulance report online through local emergency updates. Everything Ethan said had been true. Daniel admitted he respected honesty, but had still chosen convenience over character. So why call me now? Daniel smiled slightly. Because someone else also called. Who? Mrs. Margaret Lawson. Ethan looked genuinely surprised. She somehow found out this company was where you interviewed. I never told her. No. Apparently one of the paramedics remembered seeing the building's visitor badge clipped to your folder. Daniel leaned back. She didn't ask me to hire you. What did she say? She said, if that young man treats complete strangers the way he treated me, imagine how he'll treat people who actually trust him with responsibility. Silence filled the office. Daniel smiled. I couldn't stop thinking about those words. Just then another woman entered the room carrying several files. Daniel stood. I'd like you to meet our CEO. Ethan immediately stood as well. The CEO smiled warmly. So you're the young man everyone's talking about. I don't think that's true. She laughed. You're modest too. She sat across from him. We've read your resume. Your experience isn't perfect. I know. But character is harder to teach than software. For the next hour they conducted what became the interview Ethan should have had from the beginning. This time no one looked at the clock. They asked about teamwork, mistakes, leadership, failure, and difficult choices. Ethan answered honestly every time. At the end Daniel closed the folder. We'd like to offer you the position. Ethan remained silent. He wasn't sure he had heard correctly. The CEO smiled. You'll have plenty to learn. I will. But we'd rather train someone with integrity than hire someone who only arrived on time. He finally smiled. I won't let you regret it. We don't think you will. As Ethan left the building with the offer letter in his hands, He looked at the same crosswalk where everything had almost fallen apart. It looked completely ordinary. Cars passed. People hurried by. Nothing suggested that one ordinary decision had quietly changed several lives. A few weeks later, Ethan visited Margaret again, this time carrying flowers instead of worry. She laughed when she saw him. "You found work." "I did. I knew you would." He handed her a framed photograph. It showed the engineering office during his first week. "You didn't have to bring this. I wanted you to see where your phone call led." She looked at the picture for a long moment. "No," she said gently. "That wasn't my phone call." Ethan looked confused. "It was your decision." Months passed. Ethan settled into the job, earning respect one project at a time. His mother finally moved into a small, brighter apartment where the ceiling didn't leak whenever it rained. The debts slowly disappeared. Life didn't become perfect, but it finally felt steady. One afternoon, Daniel admitted something Ethan never expected. The position almost went to someone with better qualifications. "What changed your mind?" Daniel smiled. "I kept asking myself one question." "What question?" "If success depends on choosing yourself every time, what kind of company are we building?" Ethan never forgot that conversation. Neither did Daniel. And every time Ethan crossed that same intersection on his way to work, he remembered the morning when he almost reached the interview on time, but instead reached the person who needed him most.